"Grandma, why don't you visit us anymore?" My 7-year-old granddaughter Lily's innocent question pierced my heart as we spoke on the video call, a rare connection arranged secretly by my daughter-in-law Jennifer while my son was at work. "I miss you very much, sweetheart," I managed, fighting back tears. But sometimes grown-ups have disagreements. "Daddy says you teach us bad things," Lily continued, her small face confused. "But you only taught me how to bake cookies and plant flowers." Before I could respond, Jennifer gently moved Lily away from the screen. "That's enough questions for now, honey. Go play with your brother." When she returned, her expression was apologetic. "I'm sorry, Sandra. David is being completely unreasonable. I don't agree with him, but he's your husband," I finished for her. "I understand." I didn't understand, not really. How could my own son believe I was a dangerous influence on his children because I'd let them have ice cream before dinner once? Or because I'd taught Lily about my Catholic faith when she asked about the small cross I wore? Has your family member ever cut you off from seeing your grandchildren? Have you been unfairly labeled a bad influence despite your best intentions? Share your story in the comments below. I'd love to know which city you're listening from and if anything like this has happened to you. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this to you. My name is Sandra Moretti. I am 68 years old, and until that terrible Sunday dinner 8 months ago, I thought I knew what family meant. I was wrong. I had always been close to my son David. I raised him alone after his father left when he was just 4 years old. Every baseball game, every science fair, every fever and nightmare I was there, working 2 jobs to ensure he had everything he needed. I remember the nights I'd come home from my second shift at the hospital, exhausted but still taking time to read him a bedtime story. I remember sewing his Halloween costumes by hand because we couldn't afford the store-bought ones. I remember helping him with college applications late into the night, both of us drinking coffee to stay awake. When he earned a full scholarship to college, I was so proud I wept. I worked extra hours that month to buy him a decent laptop to take to school, nothing fancy, but reliable. The day I dropped him off at his dormitory, I gave him a St. Christopher medal that had belonged to my father. For protection, I told him. He wore it every day throughout college. When he met Jennifer during his senior year, I was delighted. She was kind, intelligent, and clearly adored my son. Unlike some mothers-in-law, I never felt threatened by her presence in David's life. When they married 2 years later, I helped with the wedding preparations, staying firmly in the background, never imposing my preferences. I wanted them to have their perfect day. And when they had their children, Lily, now 7, and Michael, now 5, I thought my heart would burst with joy. I was there in the hospital for both births, bringing home-cooked meals, doing laundry, whatever was needed while Jennifer recovered. Those early days with each newborn were precious beyond words. Watching David become a father, seeing Jennifer's natural maternal instincts, holding those tiny bundles and singing the same Italian lullabies I had sung to David. David and Jennifer bought a house just 30 minutes from my small apartment. I visited weekly, babysitting whenever needed, bringing small gifts for the children, and always respecting their parental boundaries. Or so I thought. I never showed up unannounced. I never contradicted their instructions regarding the children. If they said bedtime was 7:30, bedtime was 7:30, even if the children begged for just one more story, Grandma. My apartment became a special place for the grandchildren. I kept a drawer in the kitchen filled with child-safe cooking tools so they could help me make pasta from scratch, a skill passed down through generations in our family. In the spare bedroom, I had bins of toys and books that I rotated regularly to keep things interesting for them. In the spring and summer, we tended a small balcony garden together, watching seeds transform into flowers and vegetables. These were simple joys, modest traditions, nothing extravagant, nothing controversial, at least, that's what I believed. The dinner that changed everything started pleasantly enough. I had brought homemade lasagna, David's favorite since childhood, and a children's book for each grandchild. The aroma of garlic and basil filled their home, and David greeted me with his usual hug. "Smells like my childhood," he said, kissing my cheek. Nothing in his manner suggested the storm that was coming. We ate together, laughing and sharing stories. Jennifer mentioned a promotion she was hoping for at work, and I expressed genuine enthusiasm. David talked about a new client his company had secured. The children chattered about school and friends. It felt normal, comfortable, the family dinner we had shared hundreds of times before. After dinner, Michael asked if I would read his new book, and Lily wanted to show me her science project. I was following Lily toward her bedroom when David's voice stopped us. "Actually, kids, Grandma needs to leave early tonight," he said abruptly. "Mom, can I walk you out?" Confused, I had only just finished my coffee. I followed him to the porch, where his expression changed completely. The warmth vanished, replaced by something cold and distant that I had never seen before. "Mom, we need to talk about your influence on the kids," he began, his voice tight. "My influence?" I repeated, not understanding. "Jennifer and I are trying to raise our children with certain values, modern values, but you keep undermining us." "David, I would never." "You took Lily to church last month without asking us. You let Michael skip his nap when you watched him last week. You bought them candy after we specifically said they shouldn't have sugar." Each accusation felt increasingly absurd. The church visit had happened because Lily saw me praying and had questions. I had taken her to a weekday service, not even a full mass, just so she could see what it was like. The missed nap was because Michael had been engrossed in a puzzle we were doing together. He hadn't been cranky afterward, just pleasantly tired at bedtime. And the candy had been a small chocolate after they had both eaten their vegetables, hardly the sugar binge he was implying. "David, these seem like very small things," I said carefully. "If I overstepped, I apologize, but—" "It's not just those things," he interrupted. "It's your whole outlook. You're from a different generation. Your views on discipline, on religion, on nutrition, they're outdated. Jennifer and I have been talking, and we think it's best if you visit less frequently. And only when both of us are present." I felt as if I'd been slapped. "You want to supervise my time with my grandchildren? David, that's non-negotiable," he finished coldly, "if you want to see them at all." I stared at my son, this man I had raised with such love, now looking at me as if I were a stranger, a threat to be managed. How had we arrived at this moment? What had I missed? "Could you give me some specific examples of what concerns you?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "I want to understand, David." He sighed, as if my request for clarification was itself a burden. "You tell them stories about heaven and guardian angels. We're raising them to think critically, scientifically. You let them eat processed food at your apartment. We're raising them to understand nutrition. You let them watch cartoons we don't approve of. We're careful about media consumption." I wanted to defend myself. The stories about heaven had been in response to Lily's questions about where my parents were now. The processed food had been homemade bread with a small amount of Nutella as a special treat. The cartoons had been classic Looney Tunes that David himself had loved as a child. But I could see from his expression that explanations would fall on deaf ears. Something had changed in my son, something fundamental that I didn't understand. "I see," I said finally. "I'll respect your wishes, of course. But David, these seem like very minor differences that we could discuss and find compromise." "There's no room for compromise when it comes to my children," he said, emphasizing the possessive. "Jennifer and I are their parents. We decide what's best for them." I left in tears, utterly bewildered by this sudden change in my son. When had he become this rigid, judgmental person? When had my occasional indulgences of my grandchildren become threatening to him? The following weeks were painful. My weekly visits became monthly, then stopped altogether as David repeatedly canceled at the last minute. My calls went unanswered. The only updates I received were from Jennifer, who would occasionally send photos or arrange brief video calls when David wasn't home. "I don't agree with him," she whispered during one such call. "But I can't openly defy him, Sandra. It would just make things worse." I understood her position, though it offered little comfort. Jennifer was caught between loyalty to her husband and her own sense of what was right for the children. I couldn't blame her for choosing peace in her marriage. Through these furtive communications, I learned that David had been promoted to an executive position at his company and was now socializing with a different circle, wealthy colleagues who sent their children to exclusive private schools and had strong opinions on proper child rearing. He seemed determined to fit into this world, even if it meant rejecting his own upbringing and, by extension, me. "They all have nannies with child development degrees," Jennifer told me during one call. "They have educational consultants and nutritionists. David feels inadequate sometimes. He's trying to prove he belongs." At the expense of his mother's relationship with his children? It seemed a terrible price to pay for social acceptance. After 3 months of this treatment, I received a text message that broke my heart completely. "Mom, Jennifer and I have decided that it's best if you don't have contact with the children for a while. Your outdated views and constant boundary crossing are confusing them and undermining our parental authority. We'll reach out when we feel the time is right." No discussion. No opportunity to defend myself or change whatever behaviors he found so objectionable. Just exile from my beloved grandchildren's lives. I called David immediately, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. When he finally answered, his voice was cold. "There's nothing to discuss, Mom. This is our decision as parents." "David, please," I begged, tears streaming down my face. "Tell me what I've done that's so terrible. Give me a chance to understand, to make changes if needed." "It's not one specific thing," he replied. "It's who you are. You're a bad influence on my children, and until you can recognize and change that, this is how it has to be." Who I was? A retired teacher who had devoted her life to children, a woman who had raised him single-handedly, working extra shifts to pay for his soccer uniforms and science camp. A grandmother whose greatest joy was reading stories and baking cookies with her grandchildren. This was the dangerous influence he needed to protect his children from? After that call, I fell into a deep depression. My apartment, once cozy, now felt empty without the children's visits. The toys I kept in the spare room gathered dust. The refrigerator magnets holding Lily's artwork mocked me with memories of happier times. I stopped attending my weekly church service. I lost interest in my gardening. I let calls from friends go to voicemail. Food lost its flavor, and sleep became elusive. I would lie awake at night, replaying every interaction with David and the children, searching for the offense that had led to this exile. My friend Eleanor, who lived in the same apartment complex, became concerned when I stopped attending our weekly coffee gatherings. She showed up at my door one day, refusing to leave until I let her in. "This isn't right, Sandra," she said firmly after I explained what had happened. "You need to fight for your relationship with those children." "How?" I asked, feeling defeated. "David has all the power. They're his children." "Grandparents have rights too," Eleanor insisted. "My sister went through something similar. She consulted a family lawyer." Eleanor. The idea of taking legal action against my own son was almost unthinkable, but as weeks turned into months with no contact, not even on my birthday or at Christmas, I began to consider it. The lawyer I eventually consulted, Patricia Mendez, was compassionate but realistic. "Grandparent visitation rights vary by state," she explained, "and courts generally defer to parents' decisions unless there's evidence of harm to the children, but sometimes just having a lawyer reach out can open a dialogue." She sent a carefully worded letter to David, requesting a mediation session to discuss reasonable visitation. His response was swift and harsh, a cease and desist letter from his own attorney, threatening further legal action if I continued to harass his family. Hurt beyond words, I decided not to pursue the legal route. I couldn't bear the thought of a contentious court battle that might only deepen the rift between us. Instead, I focused on healing myself. I returned to volunteer teaching at the community center. I joined a support group for estranged grandparents, where I found comfort in knowing I wasn't alone in this painful situation. The stories I heard in that group both horrified and consoled me. Grandparents cut off because they wouldn't provide financial support. Grandparents alienated because of religious or political differences. Grandparents used as convenient babysitters until they expressed an independent opinion, then discarded. "The hardest part," said one grandmother whose situation mirrored mine, "is that society doesn't recognize this as a real loss. If my child had died, people would bring casseroles and offer condolences, but when your child chooses to cut you off, people assume you must have done something to deserve it." This resonated deeply with me. I had begun avoiding certain neighbors who would ask about my grandchildren, not wanting to explain that I was no longer allowed to see them. The shame was overwhelming, though I had done nothing to deserve it. And I wrote letters, dozens of them. Letters to Lily and Michael that they might never read, recording family stories, sharing wisdom, expressing my unchanging love. Letters to David, trying to understand his perspective, reflecting on my own possible missteps, pleading for reconciliation. Letters to my future self, promising that somehow, someday, this wound would heal. None of these letters were sent. They were my therapy, my way of maintaining connection to a family that had shut me out. 6 months into my estrangement, I received an unexpected text from Jennifer. David's Mother's Day gift to me was a weekend away by myself. I'm taking the kids to the museum tomorrow. If you happen to be there around 11, I won't stop them from talking to their grandmother. It was a small rebellion on Jennifer's part, a tiny crack in the wall David had built. I was at the Children's Museum by 10:30 the next morning, my heart racing with anticipation and fear. Would the children even remember me? Would they have been taught to avoid me? When they saw me near the dinosaur exhibit, both children broke away from Jennifer and ran to me, wrapping their small arms around my waist. "Grandma, we missed you so much," Lily cried. "Why did you go away?" Michael asked, his little face serious. Jennifer approached slowly, giving us space for our reunion. "They've asked about you every day," she said quietly. "I've tried to explain, but how do you explain something so senseless to children?" We spent 2 precious hours together. I was careful to say nothing negative about David, to avoid giving treats, to keep our conversation light and uncontroversial. When it was time to leave, Jennifer promised to try arranging more accidental meetings. "David is under a lot of pressure," she confided as the children explored a nearby exhibit. "His new position, his new friends, he's trying so hard to be what he thinks they expect. But it's changing him, and not for the better." These clandestine meetings continued for several weeks, a quick lunch here, an accidental encounter at the park there. Each time, the children's joy at seeing me confirmed what I already knew. Whatever David's issues with me were, they had nothing to do with my relationship with my grandchildren. Then came the call that changed everything. It was Jennifer, her voice tight with stress. "Sandra, David's been let go from his position. The company is downsizing. He's not handling it well. He won't get out of bed, won't talk to the kids. I don't know what to do." My son, who had always tied his self-worth to his achievements, was experiencing his first major professional failure. Despite everything, my heart ached for him. "Would you like me to come over?" I asked cautiously. There was a long pause on Jennifer's end. "I don't think that's a good idea. David would see it as taking advantage of his weakness. I thought you should know." I understood. Despite her quiet rebellion in allowing me to see the children, Jennifer wasn't ready to openly defy her husband. Even in crisis, David's pride and stubbornness remained intact. 2 weeks later, I received another call from Jennifer. This time her voice was different, resolute, determined. "Sandra, I've made a decision. I'm taking the children to visit my parents in Oregon for a while. David and I need some space. He's becoming difficult to live with. His anger, his controlling behavior, it's affecting the children." My heart sank. "Jennifer, are you safe? Are the children safe?" "We're not in physical danger," she assured me quickly. "It's not like that, but the atmosphere at home has become toxic. David's obsessed with his image, with getting another executive position, with proving himself. Everything else, including his family, has become secondary." Before Jennifer and the children left for Oregon, she arranged one more meeting at the park. The children were subdued, sensing the tension in their home. Lily clung to me, and Michael kept asking if I would come with them to Grandma Rose's house in Oregon. "I can't, sweetheart," I told him gently, "but I'll be right here when you get back." Jennifer pulled me aside while the children played on the swings. "I've been thinking a lot about how David treated you," she said quietly. "I should have stood up to him sooner. I was wrong to let him cut you out of their lives." "You were in a difficult position," I said, though part of me had indeed wished she'd fought harder on my behalf. "Well, I'm in a difficult position now, too," she continued, her voice firmer, "and I'm choosing differently this time. I've told David that when we return from Oregon, your relationship with the children will be restored with or without his approval." The month Jennifer and the children spent in Oregon was transformative for her, for the children, and even for David, who was forced to confront the consequences of his behavior. When they returned, Jennifer moved herself and the children into a small rental house, initiating what she called a trial separation. David was furious, of course. He blamed me, convinced I had somehow manipulated Jennifer into leaving him. The day after they returned from Oregon, he showed up at my apartment unannounced, his face contorted with rage. "Are you happy now?" he demanded, pushing past me into the living room. "You've turned my wife against me, poisoned my children." "I've done nothing of the sort," I interrupted, finding a strength I hadn't known I possessed. Jennifer made her own decision based on your behavior, not mine. This is all your fault, he insisted. If you had just respected our boundaries, our parenting choices. Your boundaries were unreasonable, David. Cutting a loving grandmother out of her grandchildren's lives over trivial disagreements isn't parenting, it's control. He paced my small living room, running his hands through his hair in frustration. I need you to talk to Jennifer. Tell her I've changed. Tell her to come home. I looked at my son, this man I had raised with such love, now reduced to demanding I fix a situation he had created. No, David, I won't do that. Jennifer needs to make her own decisions, and you need to respect them, just as you insisted I respect yours. You're enjoying this, aren't you? He accused bitterly. Seeing me suffer, seeing my family fall apart. This is your revenge. This isn't revenge, I said calmly. This is consequence. You cut me out of your life and the children's lives for daring to be myself. Now Jennifer has chosen to distance herself and the children for the same reason. The common denominator here isn't me, David, it's you. He left in anger, slamming the door so hard that the frame cracked, a fitting metaphor for our broken relationship. In the months that followed, Jennifer remained firm in her separation. She enrolled in classes to complete the education she had postponed when she became pregnant with Lily. She found part-time work at a local bookstore, and most importantly, she ensured that the children spent regular time with me. David, meanwhile, spiraled further. He lost another job. He missed scheduled visitations with his children. He left angry voicemails for both Jennifer and me, alternating between blame and desperate pleas for help. The final breaking point came on Lily's 8th birthday. Jennifer had planned a small celebration at her rental house, and despite my misgivings, she had invited David, hoping he could pull himself together for his daughter's sake. He arrived late and obviously intoxicated. When he saw me helping Lily open her gifts, he created a scene, accusing me of stealing his children and ruining his life. Jennifer asked him to leave, and when he refused, she called the police. The children witnessed the entire humiliating episode. That night, after the children were finally asleep, Jennifer and I sat at her kitchen table, both emotionally drained. I can't do this anymore, she said quietly. The kids can't do this anymore. We're moving to Oregon permanently. My parents have offered to help us get settled, and there's a good school district near them. My heart sank. While I had reclaimed my relationship with my grandchildren, I would now lose them to distance. When? Next month. I've already enrolled the kids in school for the fall semester. She reached across the table and took my hand. I want you to come with us. I stared at her in shock. Leave? Move to Oregon? She nodded. My parents have a guest house on their property. It's small, but it would be yours. The kids would have both their grandmother and great-grandparents in their lives. You could continue your volunteer teaching at the local school. But this is my home, I said, though even as I spoke, I realized that home was no longer a place but the people I loved, my grandchildren. Think about it, Jennifer urged. What's keeping you here? Memories? A son who has made it clear he doesn't want you in his life? The question lingered with me for days as I considered her offer. What was keeping me here? Hope that David would change? That somehow our relationship could be repaired? I consulted Eleanor, who surprised me with her immediate endorsement of the plan. Go, she said firmly. Build a new life with those who value you. David made his choice, Sandra. Now you make yours. I made my decision. I would go to Oregon, start fresh with Jennifer and the children. I would sell my few possessions, give up my apartment, and leave behind the city where I had lived my entire life. The day before we were scheduled to leave, there was a knock at my nearly empty apartment. It was David, looking haggard but sober. You're really leaving, he said, noticing the packed boxes. Yes, Jennifer and the children need a fresh start. And you're going with them. It wasn't a question. I am. He slumped against the doorframe. Mom, please, I need help. I've lost everything, my job, my family, my home. I have nowhere else to turn. A year ago, those words would have melted my heart. I would have done anything to help my son, to restore our relationship. But that was before he had systematically cut me out of his life, called me a bad influence, and blamed me for the consequences of his own actions. I'm sorry, David. I can't help you anymore. You need professional help, counseling, perhaps a support group, but I can't be the one to provide it. You're my mother, he said, his voice breaking. "You can't just abandon me." "I'm not abandoning you. I'm choosing to prioritize my relationship with my grandchildren, the very relationship you tried to destroy." "I'll change," he promised desperately. "I'll get better. I'll be the son you deserve." I looked at him sadly. "I hope you do change, David. I truly do. But not for me. For yourself, and for your children. If you genuinely want to be part of their lives again, you'll need to prove it to Jennifer through consistent actions, not just words." "And what about you? Will you ever forgive me?" I considered his question carefully. "I've already forgiven you, David. But forgiveness doesn't mean I'm willing to put myself in a position to be hurt again. It doesn't mean I trust you." That trust was broken, and rebuilding it would take years of consistent effort on your part. "So this is it? You're choosing them over me?" "No, David. You made the initial choice to exclude me. I'm simply living with the consequences of that choice, as are you." He left without another word, a broken man facing the ruins of the life he had built and then destroyed. Part of me ached for him, the little boy I had raised and loved. But the stronger part of me, the part that had emerged through this painful journey, knew I was making the right decision. The next morning, Jennifer, the children, and I left for Oregon. We didn't say goodbye to David. He didn't come to see us off. In Oregon, I found an unexpected new chapter of my life. Jennifer's parents welcomed me warmly. The guest house became my cozy home. I began volunteer teaching at the local elementary school, where eventually Lily and Michael would attend. Most importantly, I was present for my grandchildren daily, watching them heal and thrive away from the toxic environment their father had created. David called occasionally during those first few months, sometimes sober and remorseful, sometimes angry and accusatory. Eventually, the calls became less frequent, then stopped altogether. I heard through mutual acquaintances that he had moved to another state for a fresh start. I hoped he found the help he needed, though I no longer felt responsible for ensuring he did. 3 years have passed since we moved to Oregon. Jennifer has completed her degree and works as an elementary school librarian. The children are thriving. Lily is now a confident 10-year-old with a passion for science, and Michael, at 8, has discovered a talent for music. I have built a rich life here, surrounded by people who value and respect me. David has made no attempt to visit his children, though he occasionally sends birthday cards with extravagant promises he never keeps. Jennifer has filed for divorce, and David hasn't contested it or the custody arrangements. It seems he has accepted, at least legally, the loss of his family. Sometimes, late at night, I still wonder if there was something more I could have done, some way I could have reached David before his insecurities and need for status destroyed everything he truly valued. But those thoughts come less frequently now. I've learned that we cannot save people from themselves, no matter how much we love them. My son said, "You're a bad influence on my children," and forbade me from seeing my grandchildren. A year later he begged for my help, but by then it was too late. The damage was done, the trust shattered beyond repair. Sometimes the greatest act of love is knowing when to walk away, not in anger or revenge, but in the quiet certainty that you deserve better than to be someone's scapegoat or safety net. I lost a son, but I saved myself and my relationship with my grandchildren, and in doing so, I discovered a strength I never knew I possessed. If you enjoyed my story, please don't forget to like, subscribe to my channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss my new life stories. Your support means everything to me and helps me continue sharing these real experiences. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next video.